Well, first up, let's get you these pictures of the rescued Iranian sailors that has now come in, and the first pictures of the Lankan Navy that seems to be helping and aiding those Iranian sailors. The first pictures that are now coming in of those sailors who survived the U.S. torpedo attack on the Iranian warship Iris Dena, who was part of a joint naval exercise that was carried out with India. However, the warship, the Iranian warship, was sunk by U.S. in an attack to this level that has been reported for the first time since World War II. Now, it was about 90 nautical miles off Gaul, and nearly 32 survivors were brought ashore following the attack. Let's get in a word from Rishabh now. While at sea, we are looking at Sri Lanka's maritime search and rescue operations that were taking place, in which India is also assisting. But what is being believed, Rishabh, more than 80 sailors, 80 Iranians lost their lives in this U.S. torpedo attack. But there are many survivors as well who are now being, taken to Sri Lankan hospital there for further treatment.
Well, Amitabh, what we're given to understand that about 110 sailors were on board Iris Dena, the Iranian warship that was traveling from Milan exercise in Visakhapatnam back to their base. What we are given to understand that close to the Sri Lankan waters, there was an SOS call that was sent to Sri Lankan Navy after the Dena ship, the Iranian ship Dena, was torpedoed by a U.S. submarine. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War of the United States, also confirmed later on 4th March that yes, it was the U.S. ship, U.S. submarine that torpedoed the Iranian warship. But now what we're given to understand that out of the 110 sailors who were on board Iris Dena, only 32 could survive, who are being right now given treatment in the hospital in southern Sri Lanka. 80 plus of the sailors have lost their life in this attack is what we can confirm to our viewers now. We have spoken to leaders from Sri Lanka as well, and they say that when the SOS call came in, we acted only as per the international norms.
Well, that is what India has also been doing, as far as several questions have been raised over when it comes to the dominance over Indian Ocean. But there are international waters as well. And this has happened even beyond when it comes to Sri Lankan Navy. As you can see in those pictures there, several of the Iranian soldiers there who have been rescued after the warship, the Iranian warship, had left India after a significant amount of time, where the joint exercise was carried out. And after that, we are looking at it was on its way back to Iran, where it came, became the victim of the silent death, what US has now been calling it as far as their Secretary of War is now concerned. And there you can see multiple ambulances that have now been pressed into service when it comes to the rescue of the sailors and also to retrieve the bodies of the downed sailors that now we are looking at. And even when it comes to the Indian Navy, that has also now been pressed into service. Now, the US-Israel war on Iran has also triggered a lot of turbulence in the Indian Ocean. An American submarine torpedoed and sank the Iranian ship off the southern coast of Sri Lanka, killing over 85 people. Now, this was the first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo by the US since the Second World War. And this incident occurred, the warship that was returning from a joint naval exercise in India, from Visakhapatnam. Now, a day later, several questions are being raised about the stability of the Indian subcontinent and its wider South Asian waters. But before we get you the blame game and how does this escalation purposely, impact India, let's get you a basic understanding. What experts believe and suggest that India cannot be blamed or India cannot be faulted for this incident. Ultimately, one has to remember that through the strike on Iris Dena, that was on India's strategic water. It wasn't in the jurisdiction, but it was very much in international waters where the warship was sunk. So let's take you through the key factors as to why India cannot get involved at this point. Now, what did the US do? US attacked the Iranian warship, and why India cannot get involved. One of the factors that say that incident is near Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone. India there has no jurisdiction. However, when it comes to the limited area of the Indian Ocean, India can only have a say in those factors. Meanwhile, Iris Dena sunk outside India's EEZ, which is the exclusive economic zone, and the exclusive economic zone that extends about 370 kilometers when we speak from the Indian coastline. Now, experts suggest that India here is not at fault and cannot be held responsible. However, speaking of